Hello, I never thought that I would be the one to talk about this. I mean, my life wasn't perfect, but I thought Anna and I had a solid thing going. We've been married for almost 7 years. She's got this fire about her, you know? The kind that makes you feel lucky just to be standing in its warmth. Lately, though, that fire's been different. Dimmer, maybe. Or maybe it's just me. Let me backtrack a bit. Anna's been into fitness for as long as I can remember. It's one of the things I love about her. She's disciplined and determined. About a year ago, she started training with Damien, this personal trainer she met through a friend. I didn't think much of it. I mean, Damien and I are buddies. We met at a bar one night, totally random, and just hit it off. He's got that charismatic vibe, the kind that makes you feel like you've known him forever. Before I knew it, he was coming over for Sunday football, and we were throwing back beers like we'd been doing it for years. I never imagined he'd be the cause of all this. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started with a picture. I was in my home office late one evening trying to meet a deadline. My phone buzzed on the desk. At first, I ignored it, but the screen lit up again, and something about the timing. It was past 10 p.m. Made me check. It was a message from an unknown number. Your wife and your best friend, it read. Attached was a photo of Anna and Damien sitting across from each other at a dimly lit table. Her face was glowing in the flicker of candlelight, a smile I hadn't seen in months lighting up her features. Damien looked just as I remembered him. Charming, easygoing. They were leaning in close, too close, and I could swear her hand was resting on his. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe this was old. Maybe someone was playing a cruel joke. But my gut wouldn't let it go. Who sent this? Why? And why now? I stared at the photo until the lines blurred. Anna had told me she was out with friends that night. I even remembered kissing her goodbye, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air after she left. She'd smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Had I missed something? Was there a reason she'd been distant lately? I shook my head, telling myself I was being paranoid. But that didn't explain the photo. I texted the number back. Who is this? Where did you get this picture? No response. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. I couldn't focus after that. I closed my laptop and paced the house, the silence pressing in on me. Anna wasn't home yet. The clock ticked past midnight, and my anxiety turned to frustration. I checked my phone again. Nothing. Finally, I went to bed, though sleep was the last thing on my mind. Anna came home around 1 a.m. I heard the soft click of the front door and the shuffle of her shoes being kicked off. I stayed in bed, pretending to be asleep, but my heart was racing. She slipped into the room quietly and climbed into bed without a word. I could smell wine on her breath. The next morning, I asked her how her night was. She gave me a breezy, "Oh, it was fine," and started scrolling through her phone. Something about her tone felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I wanted to confront her about the picture, but I held back. I needed more information before jumping to conclusions. Over the next few days, I started noticing little things. Anna was on her phone more often, but whenever I walked into the room, she'd lock it and set it down. She'd been going to the gym more frequently, and her sessions with Damien seemed to last longer than usual. When I asked about it, she shrugged it off, saying she was training for a charity 5K. It made sense, but that gnawing feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. Then there was Damien. We hadn't hung out in weeks, which was unusual. He was always the one to suggest grabbing a beer or catching a game. I texted him a couple of times, but his replies were short, almost dismissive. Maybe he was just busy, I thought, but the timing felt too coincidental. I started to feel like a stranger in my own life. I didn't know what to believe, and every small interaction with Anna felt loaded. Was I imagining the way her smile faded when she thought I wasn't looking? The way she avoided meeting my eyes? The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon. Anna had gone to one of her marathon gym sessions, leaving me alone in the house. I wasn't doing much, just tidying up the living room, trying to distract myself from the gnawing unease that had taken root in my chest over the past few weeks. As I bent down to retrieve a stray sock from under the sofa, my fingers brushed against something small and cool. Frowning, I reached further and pulled it out. It was a bracelet, thick, masculine, and heavy. Not the kind of delicate jewelry Anna would wear. The leather strap was well made, with a polished silver plate on the clasp. I turned it over in my hand, studying it. It wasn't mine. I'd never owned anything like this, and I couldn't imagine why it would be in our house. Then I noticed the engraving on the underside of the silver plate. D and A. My breath caught in my throat. The letters glared up at me, sharp and accusatory. Damien and Anna. Couldn't be a coincidence. My pulse quickened as I stared at it, my thoughts racing. Was this Damien's? Had he left it here? And if so, why? I stood up slowly, the bracelet still clutched in my hand. I replayed the last few weeks in my head, trying to piece together anything that might explain its presence. Anna's recent behavior, her extra hours at the gym, her increasingly secretive phone habits. They all came rushing back, forming a picture I didn't want to see. I told myself there could be another explanation. Maybe Damien had been here and accidentally left it. He used to stop by all the time. Maybe this was from one of those visits. But when? I couldn't remember the last time he'd been over. And why would something so personal, engraved with initials, just slip his mind? I felt a knot forming in my stomach, a mix of anger, confusion, and dread. I tucked the bracelet into my pocket and spent the next hour pacing the house, alternately trying to convince myself it was nothing and imagining every worst-case scenario. The initials burned in my mind like a brand. By the time Anna came home, I'd worked myself into a state. She walked in, her gym bag slung over her shoulder, a light sheen of sweat on her forehead. She looked refreshed, almost glowing, but something about her expression, relaxed, carefree, only made me feel worse. "Hey," she said, kicking off her shoes. "How was your day?" I forced a smile, my hand slipping into my pocket to touch the bracelet. Felt like a bomb I was waiting to detonate. "Not bad," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Hey, I found something earlier. Thought it might be yours." Her brows knitted together in mild confusion. "What is it?" I pulled the bracelet out and held it up. Her reaction was so subtle that, if I hadn't been staring at her so intently, I might have missed it. A flicker of recognition in her eyes, a tightening of her jaw. But she recovered quickly, giving me a small laugh as she reached for it. "Oh, it's Damien's," she said lightly. "He must have left it here ages ago. I'll make sure he gets it back." Her answer should have been reassuring, but it wasn't. It was too smooth, too quick, and the way she avoided my gaze made my chest tighten. "Funny," I said, testing her. "I don't remember him wearing it." She shrugged, her smile unwavering. "He probably didn't. He's always carrying random stuff in his bag. You know how he is." I nodded, pretending to accept her explanation, but the words rang hollow. If it was his, why hadn't he mentioned losing it? And why was it here under the sofa, like it had been hidden or forgotten? The rest of the evening passed uneventfully, at least on the surface. Anna acted like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was avoiding me. And every time I thought about the bracelet, my chest ached with the weight of unanswered questions. That night, as Anna slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, the initials D and a looping in my mind like a broken record. Was this just another strange coincidence? Or was it a clue? One I wasn't ready to follow to its inevitable conclusion? I don't know what's worse. The idea that I'm imagining all this or the sinking certainty that I'm not. Over the next few days, I tried to push the bracelet out of my mind, but it stayed with me, a quiet nagging thought in the back of my head. Anna's dismissive explanation about it being Damien's felt hollow, and I kept replaying her tone in my mind, dissecting it for hidden meanings. Was I making something out of nothing? Or was my gut trying to tell me something I didn't want to admit? But Anna's behavior wasn't helping. She was distant in a way I hadn't seen before. Our conversations, which used to flow naturally, now felt strained. She didn't ask about my work, my day, or anything that wasn't directly related to logistics. When I asked her about hers, she gave vague, clipped answers like she was going through the motions. We'd always been a team, but lately, she seemed to be operating solo. Plans we'd once dreamed of together were now met with indifference. I brought up a potential getaway to Italy, an idea we'd romanticized about for years, but she brushed it off without much thought. Maybe next year, she'd said, eyes already elsewhere, as if the suggestion barely registered. Intimacy had become a ghost in our relationship. At first, I rationalized it. She was tired, busy, focused on her fitness goals. But after weeks of rejected advances and curt dismissals, it was clear something deeper was happening. Every time I tried to bridge the gap, she seemed to build a taller wall. Then came the napkin. I decided to clean out the car one Saturday, partly out of boredom and partly because it felt like a way to make sense of something, anything in my life. As I reached under the passenger seat, my hand found a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was a napkin from a local wine bar we hadn't visited in over a year. On the back, in faint blue ink, were the words, Thursday, 7 p.m. I stared at it, my mind racing. The handwriting wasn't Anna's. It wasn't mine either. But I recognized it. It had Damien's distinct loops and slanted letters. I felt a jolt in my chest as I turned the napkin over, searching for more context. But that was all it said. I stood there in the driveway, the napkin in one hand and a growing sense of dread in the other. Had Anna been to that bar recently? Was this another one of Damien's forgotten items, casually left behind like the bracelet? And if so, why hadn't she mentioned it? When I asked her about it later, she didn't hesitate. Oh, that's from a meetup with Damien, she said easily. We went there to brainstorm ideas for the charity 5K. Talk about sponsorships and routes. I must have left it in the car. Her tone was light, dismissive, as if the napkin wasn't worth a second thought. It was a plausible answer, and yet, something about the way she said it felt too polished, like she'd rehearsed it. And if it was so innocent, why hadn't she mentioned the meeting before? I tried to distract myself, to let it go. But the doubts were relentless. Every small, innocuous moment now felt like a clue. I started paying closer attention to everything, her schedule, her habits, the way she interacted with me. One night, as we sat in the living room watching TV, I noticed her shift uncomfortably when a scene about infidelity came on. She grabbed the remote and flipped the channel without explanation. That show's too slow, she muttered, not meeting my eyes. It wasn't like her to be squeamish about a storyline, but I said nothing. I didn't want to tip my hand just yet. Damien was acting strangely too. I tried reaching out to him to grab a beer or catch a game, but he always had an excuse. A packed schedule, late-night training sessions, or needing me time. When we did finally connect over the phone, he seemed normal on the surface, but he didn't ask about Anna once. That was unusual for Damien, who always seemed to have some fitness tip or compliment about her progress. It felt deliberate, like he was avoiding the subject altogether. Then the bracelet disappeared. I'd left it on the dresser in our bedroom, a silent reminder of my growing suspicions. I'd been waiting for the right moment to bring it up again, but one evening, as I was putting away laundry, I noticed it was gone. Hey, I said casually as Anna walked past. Did you move that bracelet? She stopped, her expression neutral. Oh, I gave it back to Damien, she said, her tone easy. Didn't want it lying around forever. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept her answer, but the gears in my mind were turning. When had she given it back? Damien hadn't been to the house since I found it, and I hadn't seen her take it out. Was she meeting him outside the gym? Or had she simply stashed it somewhere else to avoid the conversation? As the days passed, I felt like a detective trying to solve a mystery with missing pieces. Every clue seemed to point in one direction, but none of them provided definitive proof. And yet, The weight of my suspicions was impossible to ignore. What troubled me most was Anna herself. She wasn't the person I fell in love with, the woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes, who used to dream about our future with such certainty and joy. That version of her was fading, replaced by someone distant, guarded, and almost unknowable. Was I losing her? Or was I losing my mind? I knew I couldn't keep walking this tightrope forever. The truth was out there, waiting for me to find it. I just wasn't sure if I was ready for what I might uncover. By the time I decided to confront Anna, I'd spent weeks agonizing over the clues I'd uncovered. The bracelet, the napkin, her sudden distance. They felt like threads in a tangled web. But every time I tried to pull one, it only seemed to tighten around me. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew I couldn't keep tiptoeing around it. I needed answers. It was a Friday evening. Anna had just come home from the gym, her cheeks flushed and her ponytail slightly frayed from her workout. She dropped her bag by the door and smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'd been waiting for this moment all day, rehearsing my words, imagining her reactions. Now that she was here, my heart felt like it might pound out of my chest. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Can we talk for a minute?" She paused, one hand on the strap of her bag. "Sure," she said, her smile slipping slightly. "What's up?" I gestured toward the couch and we sat down. She looked at me expectantly, but there was a hint of caution in her eyes, like she already knew this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. "I've been noticing some changes lately," I began. My voice wavered, and I hated how uncertain I sounded. "You've been distant, distracted. And then there's the bracelet, the napkin." I trailed off, searching her face for any sign of guilt. Her brows furrowed. "The bracelet," she repeated. "I told you it was Damien's. And the napkin, it was nothing. I don't understand why you're bringing this up again." Her tone was defensive but not angry. If anything, she sounded tired, like this was an inconvenience she didn't have time for. That only fueled my frustration. "Anna," I said, leaning forward, "it's not just the bracelet or the napkin. It's everything. The way you've been avoiding me. The way you don't want to talk about our plans anymore. The way you've changed." My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated how vulnerable I felt. She stared at me for a moment, then shook her head, her expression unreadable. "Peter," she said, her voice calm but edged with irritation, "you're imagining things. I'm busy. The gym, the charity run, work. It's a lot. I'm sorry if I've been off, but it's not some big conspiracy. You need to stop overthinking everything." Her words were carefully chosen, but they didn't ease the knot in my chest. If anything, they made it worse. "Then why do I feel like I don't know you anymore?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That seemed to catch her off guard. For a split second, something flashed across her face. Guilt? Pain? Couldn't tell. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a mask of calm detachment. "I can't help how you feel," she said quietly. "But I promise, there's nothing going on. You're just working yourself up over nothing." Her words should have reassured me, but they didn't. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Something about her reaction felt off. She hadn't outright denied anything, but she hadn't given me any real answers either. It was as if she was walking a tightrope, carefully balancing her words to avoid slipping. I realized then that I couldn't take her at face value. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to find it myself. The next day, I put my plan into motion. It wasn't elaborate, but it didn't need to be. I told Anna I had to work late and waited for her to leave for her usual evening gym session. Then I drove to the wine bar from the napkin. The place was dimly lit and cozy, with an air of casual intimacy. As I sat in a corner booth nursing a beer, I scanned the room for anything or anyone that might connect to Anna. For a while, nothing happened. I was starting to feel like an idiot when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone familiar walk in. It was Damien. He wasn't wearing gym clothes, and he didn't look like he was there to meet a group of friends. He was dressed sharply, almost like he was on a date. My heart pounded as I watched him scan the room, then head toward a table in the back. A woman was already sitting there, but it wasn't Anna. She was blonde, tall, and elegant, dressed in a way that suggested money. Damien leaned in to kiss her cheek, and they started talking in hushed tones. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the body language was unmistakable. They were close, intimately close. I felt a wave of confusion and relief. If Damien was seeing someone else, then maybe I'd been wrong about him and Anna. Maybe the bracelet and the napkin really were just coincidences. But as I sat there, watching them, a new thought began to creep in. What if this woman wasn't the only one Damien was involved with? What if he and Anna were still hiding something? When I got home that night, I found Anna in the living room, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine. She looked up as I walked in, her expression unreadable. "How was work?" she asked, her voice casual. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Busy." As I sat down beside her, I couldn't shake the image of Damien at the wine bar. I wanted to tell her what I'd seen, to see how she'd react, but something held me back. Instead, I said, "Have you talked to Damien lately?" She hesitated, just for a moment, then shrugged. "Not really. Just the usual stuff at the gym." Her answer sounded plausible, but my instincts told me it wasn't the whole truth. If she was lying, she was doing a damn good job of hiding it. But now I had something she didn't know I had, Damien's secret. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for her to step into it. The truth has a way of finding you when you least expect it. It was a Wednesday evening when everything came crashing down. Anna had gone to the gym again, leaving me alone in the house. I was pacing the kitchen, debating my next move. I'd spent days thinking about Damien, about the woman at the wine bar, about Anna's increasingly cryptic behavior. Nothing added up, and the weight of my unanswered questions was suffocating. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Damien. "We need to talk. Meet me at the studio after hours. It's important." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Damien had never texted me like this before. He wasn't the serious conversation type, and the timing felt too coincidental. I typed out a quick reply agreeing to meet and grabbed my keys, a mix of dread and determination driving me out the door. The studio was quiet when I arrived, the usual buzz of music and clanging weights replaced by an eerie silence. The lights were dimmed, and for a moment, I wondered if I'd been set up. But then Damien appeared, his face grim as he walked toward me. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice low. He didn't meet my eyes, which immediately put me on edge. "What's this about?" I asked, crossing my arms. He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I should have told you this sooner, but I didn't know how." I felt a flash of anger. "Told me what, Damien? That you've been sleeping with my wife." The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. He flinched, his face pale. No, Peter, it's not like that." "Then what is it?" I demanded. He took a deep breath, as if bracing himself. "It's Anna. She's involved in something serious. I don't know all the details, but she's been using me to cover for her." "What the hell are you talking about?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of texts from Anna. Most of them were harmless on the surface, meeting times, gym schedules, but a few stood out. They mentioned names I didn't recognize, times and locations that didn't match her usual routines, and vague phrases like, "handled it," and "payment complete." "Payment?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Damien nodded, his expression grim. "She's been meeting with someone, an older guy named Victor. I've seen them together a few times. She told me he's a business contact." But he trailed off, looking genuinely uncomfortable. It didn't look like business. The room spun. I leaned against the wall, trying to process what I was hearing. Why would she lie to me? Why involve you? I don't know, he said, his voice strained. But I swear, Peter, I'm not the guy you think I am. I've been trying to pull back, but she keeps roping me in. I think she's in over her head. The next day, I followed Anna. It wasn't something I ever thought I'd do, but after what Damien told me, I had no choice. She left the house around 6 p.m., dressed sharper than usual, claiming she had a late meeting. I waited a few minutes, then got in my car and tailed her. She drove to a high-end restaurant downtown, not the kind of place we usually went to. I parked a few spaces away and watched as she walked inside. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I waited 5 minutes before following her in, my pulse pounding in my ears. What I saw stopped me cold. Anna was sitting at a table in the corner with a man I didn't recognize. He was older, maybe mid-50s, with slicked-back hair and a sharp suit. They were leaning in close, their conversation intense. She looked nervous, her fingers fidgeting with her wine glass. I approached the table, my legs moving on autopilot. When Anna looked up and saw me, her face went pale. "Peter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man turned to look at me, his expression unreadable. "Care to introduce me?" I asked, my voice cold. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The man stood, extending a hand. "Victor," he said smoothly. "I'm a friend of Anna's." "Friend," I repeated, glaring at Anna. "Is that what we're calling this?" Anna finally found her voice. "Peter, please, let me explain." "No," I snapped, my anger boiling over. "You've been lying to me for months. I want the truth, Anna. All of it." For a moment, I thought she might try to deny it again. But then she sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of her secrets had finally become too much to bear. "Victor's not just a friend," she said quietly. "He's my employer." "Employer?" I echoed, completely thrown. Victor cut in, his tone calm but firm. "Your wife has been helping me with some transactions. High value, discreet. She's been very good at it." "Transactions?" My voice rose. "What the hell are you talking about?" Anna reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Peter, I never wanted you to find out like this. I got involved with Victor a year ago, after the gym started struggling. I thought it was just a one-time thing, but it snowballed." "What kind of transactions?" I demanded, my stomach churning. "Money laundering," Victor said bluntly. "High stakes, high risk, high reward." I stared at Anna, barely able to comprehend what I was hearing. "You've been laundering money? Using Damien as a cover?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I did it for us, Peter, for our future. But then it got out of control." I shook my head, backing away. "Don't you dare try to pin this on me. You lied to me. You used Damien. You've been meeting with him, with Victor, behind my back. God knows what else you've done." Victor stepped forward, his tone icy. "This isn't the time or place for theatrics. Anna and I have business to finish, and you need to decide whether you're going to complicate things further." For a moment, the room was silent. Then I turned to Anna, my voice breaking. "Is this who you are now? Someone who cheats, lies, and launders money?" Her face crumpled, but I didn't wait for an answer. I walked out, the weight of her betrayal crushing me with every step. I don't know how long I sat in my car after leaving the restaurant. Minutes? Hours? The weight of what I just learned pressed down on me, suffocating. My Anna wasn't just unfaithful. She was a stranger, tangled up in lies, criminal schemes, and a life I didn't recognize. The woman I'd married, the one I'd built my life around, had been replaced by someone who could sit across from me, lie to my face, and then do the same with another man. My mind reeled, flipping between emotions so fast I couldn't catch my breath. Anger, grief, confusion. They all vied for control, leaving me exhausted and numb. For a moment, I felt a surge of guilt. Had I missed the signs? Had I pushed her away somehow? But then I remembered Victor's smug face and Anna's half-hearted excuses, and the guilt evaporated, replaced by a searing fury. I drove aimlessly for hours, unwilling to go home and face the emptiness that awaited me there. My phone buzzed repeatedly in the cup holder. Anna's name flashing on the screen, but I ignored it. Couldn't hear her voice. Not now. Not when everything I thought I knew about her was crumbling. When I finally walked through the door, the house was dark. For a fleeting moment, I thought Anna wasn't home. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I found her sitting in the living room, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a lamp. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mixture of fear and desperation. "Peter," she began, her voice trembling. "Please, let me explain." I stopped in my tracks, my hands balling into fists. "Explain what, Anna? How you lied to me for months, how you dragged Damien into your mess, or how you've been laundering money for a man like Victor." She flinched at my tone, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't want it to be like this. I thought I could fix everything before you found out." "Fix what?" I demanded. "Our marriage? Or the illegal operation you've been running?" She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "It started with the gym," she choked out. "We were struggling, Peter. You didn't know because I didn't tell you. I didn't want to burden you. Victor approached me about investing. It sounded legitimate at first, but then, it wasn't." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "So you just went along with it? You let him pull you into something illegal and didn't think to tell me?" "I thought I could handle it," she cried. "I thought I could get out before it got too deep. But every time I tried to leave, he threatened me." "Threatened you?" I echoed, my anger faltering for a moment. She nodded, her face pale. "Victor doesn't let people walk away, Peter. I didn't have a choice." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Was she lying? Manipulating me? Or was this finally the truth? I wanted to believe her. I really did. But after everything I discovered, I didn't know what to trust. The next morning, I got a call from Damien. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. "Peter," he said, his voice urgent, "you need to know something. Victor isn't just some businessman. He's dangerous. I've heard rumors about people who crossed him. They don't just disappear from his payroll. They disappear completely." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Anna might not be lying about being threatened, but she's also not telling you everything. Victor's not the kind of guy who leaves loose ends." Suddenly, the stakes felt higher than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about Anna's betrayal or even the affair I thought she was having. It was about survival, hers and potentially mine. I spent the rest of the day digging through everything I could find on Victor. Financial records, news articles, whispers in the darker corners of the internet. Damien was right. Victor had a history, one littered with missing persons and ruined lives. He was more than just a crook. He was a predator. When I confronted Anna that evening, her face turned white as a sheet. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "If I leave, if I tell anyone, he'll come after us. After you. You should have told me this months ago." I snapped. "Instead, you dragged me and Damien into your mess. Do you even care about what this is doing to us?" Her face crumpled, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I fell in love with. Scared, vulnerable, desperate. "I did it to protect you," she whispered. "I thought I could shield you from all of it." I shook my head, my anger ebbing into something colder and more painful. "You didn't protect me, Anna. You betrayed me. And now, I don't even know who you are." That night, as Anna slept fitfully in our bed, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the bracelet I'd found weeks ago. The initials D and A felt like a cruel joke now, a reminder of the secrets and lies that had unraveled my life. But the truth was bigger than those letters. It wasn't just about Damien or Anna or even Victor. It was about the person I'd become. Someone caught in a web of deceit, struggling to make sense of a world that no longer felt real. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Damien. "We need to meet. Victor knows about you." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Whatever was coming, I knew it wouldn't just be about Anna anymore. It was about survival. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. The days after Damien's text felt like a blur. I was on edge constantly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Victor wasn't just a name anymore. He was a shadow looming over everything. I hadn't replied to Damien's message yet. Part of me didn't want to know what Victor, knowing about me, actually meant. But the fear of doing nothing gnawed at me. Anna, meanwhile, had withdrawn completely. She barely spoke to me, her usual fiery energy extinguished. She walked through the house like a ghost, her shoulders hunched, her eyes hollow. I wanted to hate her for what she'd done, for the lies and secrets that had shattered our life. But seeing her like this, broken and terrified, made it harder to hold on to that anger. Still, love wasn't enough to fix this. Trust was gone, replaced by questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. I finally called Damien. His voice was tense when he picked up, as if he'd been waiting for my call. "I'm glad you reached out," he said. "We don't have much time. Victor's men have been asking questions about you, about whether you know too much." I gripped the phone tighter. "And do I?" Damien sighed. "Not yet. But they're paranoid, Peter. It's only a matter of time before they decide you're a liability. You and Anna both." The words sent a chill down my spine. I glanced toward the living room, where Anna sat staring at the blank TV screen, her knees pulled to her chest. "What do I do?" "You need to get out," Damien said bluntly. "Both of you. Cut ties with Victor, disappear if you have to. He won't chase you if you're no longer a threat, but staying here. It's too dangerous. Disappear." The word hung in the air, heavy and unreal. Was that what my life had come to? Running from a man I barely knew because of choices I didn't make? "What about you?" I asked. "I'll handle myself," Damien said. "I'm not as deep in as Anna is. But Peter, you can't save her if she doesn't want to be saved." That night I confronted Anna again. She was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea she hadn't touched. When I told her what Damien had said, her reaction was immediate. Panic, anger, fear all rolled into one. "We can't just leave," she said, her voice rising. "Victor will find us. He'll—" "Anna," I cut her off, my voice firm. "I can't live like this. I can't live in fear, waiting for someone to knock on our door and tear us apart. If you want to stay, that's your choice. But I'm leaving." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw genuine terror there. "You're leaving?" she whispered. "I have to," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't keep fighting for someone who won't fight for themselves. I can't keep living in a marriage built on lies." She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she grabbed mine. "Peter, please. I love you. I made mistakes, but everything I did was for us. For you." I pulled my hand away, the ache in my chest almost unbearable. "If you loved me, Anna, you would have trusted me. You would have told me the truth before it got this far." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost caved. But the weight of her betrayal, the lies, the danger, it was too much. Love wasn't enough anymore. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Anna didn't fight me on it. She seemed resigned, almost relieved, as if she knew this was the only way forward. I packed my things and moved into a small apartment across town, leaving the house and its memories behind. Damien kept his word and handled his end. I didn't ask for details, and he didn't offer them, but the calls from Victor's men stopped. It was as if the storm had passed, leaving only wreckage in its wake. In the months that followed, I tried to rebuild. It wasn't easy. The ghost of Anna lingered everywhere, in the little things like the way I folded laundry or the songs that played on the radio. I wondered, more often than I cared to admit, if I could have done something differently, if I could have saved us. But then I remembered the secrets, the lies, the danger. And I reminded myself that the Anna I'd loved was gone long before I ever knew it. One evening, as I was unpacking a box in my new apartment, I found the bracelet. I didn't remember packing it, but there it was, gleaming under the dim light. The initials D and A stared back at me, a final reminder of everything that had unraveled. I almost threw it away, but something stopped me. Instead, I slipped it into the back of a drawer, out of sight but never fully out of mind. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Anna, about where she is, what she's doing, if she's still looking over her shoulder. Part of me hopes she's found a way out of Victor's web. Another part of me knows I'll probably never see her again. But the strangest part? I'm okay with that. For now, the questions linger. The wounds remain. But so does the promise of something new, something untangled and clean. And that's enough for me to keep moving forward. I was also worried that the bracelet was back in my things. I sat on the edge of my bed, turning it over in my hands. Anna had told me she gave it back to Damien. So why was it here now? Had she lied again? Or was this her way of saying goodbye? I'll never know for sure, but holding it in that moment, I realized it didn't matter. Whatever it symbolized, love, betrayal, regret, it wasn't mine to hold on to anymore. I tucked it away in a drawer, out of sight, where it stayed ever since. A relic of a life I no longer live. Or are Damien and Anna still hiding something from me? Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was. The signs were there all along. Anna's secrecy, her distance, the way she brushed off my questions with those half-truths. But when you love someone, you want to believe the best in them. You want to believe they'll choose honesty, even when it's hard. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what happened, and here's what I've learned. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild. Anna and I built our marriage on trust, or so I thought. When that trust was shattered, everything else came crashing down with it. If someone isn't willing to be honest with you, no amount of love or effort can make up for it. Don't ignore your gut. Those little red flags, the ones you convince yourself are nothing, listen to them. I spent months rationalizing Anna's behavior, telling myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Trust your instincts, they're often more reliable than your emotions. Communication is everything. If Anna had come to me when she first got involved with Victor, things might have turned out differently. We could have faced it together. But by hiding the truth, she turned me into an outsider in my own marriage. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I spent so much time trying to fix what Anna broke, but in the end, it wasn't my battle to fight. You can support someone, but you can't carry their burdens for them, especially when they refuse to let go of the lies that weigh them down. Don't wait for things to get better on their own. If you're noticing changes in your partner, if the trust between you feels shaky, have the hard conversations now. It might be uncomfortable, but it's better than living in the dark, constantly questioning what's real. And if someone has betrayed your trust, take the time to decide what you're willing to forgive and what you're not. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. As for me, I'm still rebuilding. Trust doesn't come easily anymore, and I don't know when or if I'll be ready to love again. But I'm learning to live with that uncertainty, to accept that some questions will never be answered. There's one thing Anna said that sticks with me, though. Right before I left, she told me, sometimes we lie to protect the people we love. I've thought about that a lot. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she even meant it. But here's the thing. If love requires lies, then it's not love at all. Take care of yourselves. And remember, the truth always comes out one way or another. The real question is, are you ready to face it when it does? And yet, that bracelet still haunts me. Do you think Anna and Damien are really hiding something from me that happened between them? Let me know what you think in the comments below this video. Thanks for watching and bye.